Hello, everyone, and welcome to this online panel that we will today discuss about some of the things that in the cloud computing we are working now. And one of the dilemmas that we are now trying to solve is how we can enable this multi-provider sovereign cloud for AI, mainly for Europe. With this in mind, you will see during the panel, we have some first league companies around the cloud computing in Europe. But we have to start with some introduction. Here, Jordi Hell from OpenNebula. And let's see, all the challenges that we have in this for the next years and we are working. Let's go, because today we will present, the IPCEI cloud. This is the IPCEI that you can see here, to the largest open source project in the EU history. At the end, a lot more than 120 companies we are working together. The industry research is represented here in the program to reach some of these challenges where we have to deal with all this continuum and edge idea that we putting in the sense that if we are using different technologies in virtualization, that can be VMs, containers, Kubernetes, has to run on this continuum. And this is a specific challenge for the industry and all the people and companies that are working for the EU, in cloud computing. A lot of millions here, to solve these challenges. And let's introduce the program, because this program is like the child of another program, and this is the mechanism for the commission, to have this additional power from the industry. As you can imagine, Europe is working for some sovereignty around batteries, hydrogen, and our own chips. But this time we will introduce the cloud computing arena, where you can see here some member states are working together for this next generation cloud infrastructure and service program to boost, all these capabilities and to, at the end, to reach the edge, this pending, homework for everyone. With this in mind, and this program is organized in different work streams. We will see more or less the different work streams, but you can see here the reference companies that are leading the program, from the industry perspective and the different work streams. A lot of companies, direct participants and indirect participants that are today represented here, and where, for instance, you can see that OpenNebula is chairing this program, and, the work stream 2 that is working around the architecture that is, illustrating all these challenges. With this introduction, some of the tangible things that now we can present is like the Virtuora cluster. The Virtuora cluster is a mechanism that more than 40 partners that are providing technology in the work stream 2 that is defining the architecture of the IPCEI-CIS and Aura program. At the end, we are joining forces, to have this sovereign edge cloud for Europe ready, to be implemented in the next years. Okay. I'm sorry for this. Yes, and around the program and the different work streams. This virtual cluster, is, in this work stream 2 that is providing different or is covering the needs of the different use cases that you can see here represented, the work stream 4, from the mobility until the media. At the end, reaching, the user requirements. He's, at the core of this program, providing services about work stream 3, that all these smart advanced data processing, platforms are trying to access all this distributed infrastructure. At the end, that is covered by the work stream 1. As you can see here, this cluster inside the Virtuora, the virtualization orchestration cluster, is covering use case requirements, providing service for the data platforms and the AI services, and, trying to do some abstraction for all this cloud edge infrastructure that today is represented by cloud service providers, telco, etc. And about the testbed. Now you can see here in your screen is a reality. This testbed, is demonstrating now scalability, interoperability, and workload portability across this continuum. You can see here different companies that are offering infrastructure providers and additional ones that are, introducing in the program, like Clever Cloud or Scaleway, that are today with us, or we will be with us. And at the end, with Virtora and the capabilities of OpenNebula, is orchestrating all this infrastructure to see things, interesting things like live migrations, between different cloud providers, something that previously we only see at data center level. And what about beyond Virtora? And maybe it's part of the discussions of this panel, is that we have, some synergies in Europe around to be the AI continent, that the Commission is expecting and the industry is working on. And you can see here that with technologies that through Virtora, we are capable, to deploy, in this case, LLMs through different cloud providers, and why not interact with all the new AI factories that are being, in execution, around Europe. We can be, part of this general architecture at the end to try to have this sovereign cloud in Europe. And all with this all introduction, we can go with the important thing of the panel, is that the people that is representing these firstly companies, in cloud computing in Europe. And I want to present now and to introduce. The first is the Professor Vrasko. This is representing Jonas. Jonas, it's a direct partner in the IPCEI-CIS. He's a senior lead researcher, and they are, working at Ionora. That is the project, the individual project from Jonas, and they are building this sovereign cloud architecture, to cover all these demands. They are working in things very interesting, like the SECA, that maybe is an API, sovereign API in Europe. And from Clever Cloud, we have Jive, is the BP Alliance. Clever Cloud, is working a lot and contributing in open source. He's a digital technologist, and in this case, Clever Cloud are working a lot in the platform as a service, and they have contribution some tools like Biscuit for digital identity. From Cloudferro, Michael, that Cloudferro is working a lot with research, with initiatives like Creodias, and he's representing, and working in business development for Cloudferro. And at the end, Scaleway with Charlie, is a coach that, powering new to the team sales, new skills. They are contributing, in startups or doing support like Hugging Face, and they are working really to this true data sovereignty, and manage inference services. And with this, let's go with the panel. About the configuration of this panel, we will have 3 blocks, okay? And we will go with the first block. But previous the block, here we can see all the panelists. Thanks for your time today, for your contribution. And if you can, we can do like a round. We will have a specific order for the panel. And yes, only if we want to add something from your side for this in introduction. Let's start with Jonas Brazko. Thanks for your time today. Maybe you are muted. Yes. I cannot hear you, Brazko. Mute.
Sorry, you can now probably continue.
Now, yes.
So,
yes.
Thanks a lot, Jordi, and sorry for that. And thanks for having me here. And hopefully we can have some interesting discussions or these interesting questions. Yeah, so the first question that you brought up is how the AI reshapes the infrastructure demands in Europe, and I guess there's a lot of different viewpoints on that depending what kind of where you're sitting on. So I'm currently working for IONOS, where we're a cloud service provider and focused on at the moment providing mostly traditional services. So I'll try to answer this question from that perspective. So I think one of the issues or one thing that to consider is what exactly growing demands means exactly. I mean, it's obvious that there's an increased demand, but it's not clear how companies like a cloud service provider should respond to that. I mean, it's the business case is not very clear. How many people will actually use AI services and what kind of AI services will they use? Will they use inference or will they want to train models, which has another set of requirements? So this is for an individual CSP hard enough. And when we think of a kind of federated environment where we have multiple sovereign clouds where the customers can pick and choose from, ideally, then that will make the decision even more complex because then you don't know, will the customer stay and use your resources? How much do you invest and so on? So these are kind of, from this perspective, I think there's a challenge there that needs to be thought about quite in depth. Then another thing that is very challenging, which AI brings from CSP perspective again, is in terms of energy costs and hardware costs as well. I mean, energy is obviously expensive in many parts of Europe, so not all data centers can support these workloads in a economically efficient way. And the same thing is for the hardware. I mean, GPUs are fairly expensive investment. So it's a matter of, and they consume a lot of electricity. So it's a matter of how many do you invest, where do you put them, and how do you access them. So, I mean, CSPs obviously have a lot of experience with traditional hardware and software. There are many vendors to choose from, and we know how to operate the data centers. But with GPUs, we have additional challenges in terms of power consumption, cooling, and also purchasing the hardware. And additionally, the AI landscape is constantly changing. So it's hard to predict at the moment, at least, where the market will be, let's say, in 5 years. So any investment you make have to consider this uncertainty because you might, purchase or invest in something, and then it might turn out that it's not that relevant maybe in 5 years, or that the market has moved in another direction. Yeah, so these are some of the issues that come across. Of course, there's also a lot of positive sides. I mean, especially from the customer perspective, I mean, they ideally should be able to then mix and match resources that they need. So and be able to get the most out of different cloud service providers, depending on their business case and their demands. So resources that might not be available at IONOS might be available somewhere else, and maybe somewhere else doesn't have sufficient compute resources, and then these resources could be acquired at IONOS. So it's kind of a win-win for the customers and also for the providers, or at least for some of the providers. Yeah.
So perfect for this. I think that, yes, I think that appear some keywords we can expect. There are some sales representative here, like the business model. This is something that I think that can impact in these kind of things like the federation. And let's continue with JB from Clever Cloud.
Yes, hi. Thanks for having us today. Obviously, lots of things have already been said. Maybe in a short overview of the topics that we can consider here as important when we consider federated sovereign clouds. How can they respond to the AI infrastructure demand evolution? Number one, as it was mentioned previously, AI is bursty by nature. There are lots of demand spikes that can be addressed through a federation architecture. this spillover sort of effect. When someone cannot handle the burst, then a federated network can help in absorbing the demand and spilling over to the next operating cloud service provider. In a similar way, we see that for AI applications such as interactive assistance or industrial vision, medical, autonomous systems, the latency becomes critical. So the closer you bring the compute power to the demand, the shorter the response time is. Breaking the 20 milliseconds response time is obviously something that can be that is worth considering as an objective. And again, having a local compute resources close to where the demand is generated, helps in reducing this latency. Something that as a third point that is quite important to us from our perspective is this idea of bringing compute to the data and not the other way around. That is, where the data exists, where there is information that needs to be processed and absorbed by AI, we can bring the compute system rather than moving the data across borders. That's much easier, when you consider an operating federated network. There was also a question about this idea of the localization needs and the AI Act that was asked by Jody. Maybe a few things here. Number one, this notion of decentralized compliance. All of the operators, in this federated network, have their own compliance and their whole certifications. Using, a federated network, you possibly don't have to replicate all those compliances across the network. And very obvious that has been mentioned over and over is this legal insulation protection from the extraterritorial laws, such as the U.S. Cloud Act. Obviously, operating a sovereign federated cloud network gives the user, the reassurance that the governance of the compute, of the network, the security of the systems, and the data, are covered by EU law and not subject to export or eavesdropping, by some foreign power. So I think I will stay here for this question and hand over to you, Jody.
Yes, thanks, JB, because at the end, another keyword appeared, that is latency. We can define the edge when you are less than 20 milliseconds, from the workload, from the service. And yes, for this and around the compliance, I think that we can continue, with first round of, of answers. Let's go with Michael from Cloudferro.
Hello, everyone. Thanks again for having me. So some interesting aspects were already tackled. Maybe just as a word of introduction, in Cloudferro, we are the leading European space cloud provider for space sector, and not only because we have also other use cases, but we are mostly focused on the space sector, or our biggest customers are from there. And there is especially relevant. It is especially relevant in what JB said. The bring processing to the data is something that we observe on a daily basis, that we handle with 100 petabytes of Earth observation data. And this is not something you can transfer easily here and there on a daily basis. And I also very much agree with what Zdravko said about the challenges of handling this size of these types of use cases that are supported by the AI, or that are brought by AI. So the problem of investment, problem of electricity, this is definitely something we face as well. But I wanted also to highlight two other aspects. So the AI itself, it increases the demand for the infrastructure. So it simply increases the demand. And even the hyperscalers, they occasionally face the shortages of GPU resources and so on. So the ability to offer large GPU clusters can be a key differentiator. And this GPU cluster, it can be available among different cloud providers at different times. So the federation can be useful tool. Yeah, if we have 100, I don't know, a cluster of 100 H100 GPU cards today, they can be occupied tomorrow. Yeah, and if the customer can come to the provider with the spare capacity, this is very convenient. Yeah, and also we handle with a lot of mission critical use cases, especially based on Earth observation data, where the satellite data are processed for emergency responses, for crisis situations. And running AI close to the data source, it accelerates the decision making, and not only by milliseconds, as JB said, it can be even half an hour, 1 hour saving, just because we save the time on transferring the data. One image of, I don't know, 4 gigabytes or several image of this size. If you do the embeddings on site and then just make a decision up on the results, it just speeds up everything. And this is very important in this kind of use cases. And also several of our clouds, they are closely connected to European largest HPC. So this is connected to the AI factories, as Jordi introduced at the beginning. Yeah, and this is like leveraging the cloud infrastructure that enable optimization of processing workflows. As you know, the AI factories, they are very good to do big scale processing, which is as an HPC, it's not optimal for parallel processing or for big data storage. So having the capacity close to the HPC to store the data, to do the smaller processing, to do the parallel processing, it's very useful. So this is the properly distributed infrastructure that enables faster reaction and more efficient processing, in short.
Okay, perfect. Thanks, Michael. Because another keywords appear. It was not. I'm very happy. It was not prepared, but now appear data, and the first word that you use, GPUs, no, and all this is around the usage of GPUs. That why not this decentralized training and inference capabilities with different providers has a lot of sense, not only from latency near and here to be near the data. And let's go in this case with Charlie from Scaleway.
Yes, thank you, and a great time to be brought in, because obviously I was worried that a lot of what I wanted to say was already going to be covered. So yeah, I'm from Scaleway, and yes, just as we've talked about high performance GPUs and the need for data being nearby, the other thing is storage. That obviously these, I think it was JB who was saying, they're very bursty in terms of demand. The storage needs to be scalable to match that demand as well. So that's something that we take very seriously. Obviously, the clue is in the name of Scaleway. And just as we've scaled with our customers, because you mentioned we do a lot of work with Hugging Face and startups, we've been working with larger and larger companies now. And just to echo what the guys have been saying, we have our availability zones across Europe, and we're opening more and more like everybody else is here, because we realize we need to cut down the latency wherever possible. And then the other thing to really add that hasn't been said, I would say, on the compliance angle, is that whereas the other competitors, say the US hyperscalers, we're already aligned with what I would say are European values. So what you see in a lot of the compliance, these are openness. These are regional things that reflect what we do here in Europe, that the US competition are having to, they say that they are offer sovereign. Your data is here. It's in a data center here that's ours. It's in Europe. They don't actually go into explain about the extraterritorial angle. So I think the fact that as European companies, we already inhibit these European values, that's doing things not only in an eco-conscious way, but in a European way, that offers something else.
Okay, perfect. Yes, additional words here out of the storage, and around all these synergies. At the end, to have this sovereign market, that can compete, together in a very neutral, way. And it is very, impressive and huge, not only for technology. There is a lot of, other stuff, maybe in the politics side, to go forward with this idea. And about the compliance, and maybe we can have this additional question is around if you consider that we are together building these kind of things, and at the end we have all these regulations. So AI, maybe from the consumption of the AI, maybe that can affect more who is providing the service or consuming the service. But the Data Act is something that open a lot of, open the game, for everyone to be in the same conditions. For the Data Act, the idea is all these egress, it's, at the end will disappear, this additional cost. And but what about not only for this, the SLAs? If I'm a cloud, user, I want to use in the similar way the different providers. What do you think about the SLAs? The industry is so far from to have common SLAs, for instance. We can maintain, the order. Please, Rasco first.
I'm not sure I caught the question correctly. So you mean SLAs in terms of what exactly?
Service. About the service. See, at the end, the idea from the EU Data Act, I can move some workload from IONOS, for instance, on Scaleway,
Yeah.
And yes, but it will be in a different condition, maybe, not?
Yeah, it's a good question actually, and because earlier we also heard about you can look at these federations like a large GPU cluster that users can use, and then and maybe switch between the resources within these clusters, and then the question is who is then responsible for the SLAs and who is the the single points to blame if something goes wrong, or is there such a thing, or does the customer then have to talk to 5 different providers in order to ensure that the SLAs are fulfilled, or to get something back if they're not fulfilled? These kind of questions are in fact open questions, which we've also looked at part of other projects, and they are challenging. So I don't have a really good answer to that at the moment.
Okay, no worries. We can go in this case, JB. From what is your opinion about this?
Well, like I said earlier, I think this idea of register once and this idea of decentralized compliance is probably the thing that we want to consider. Let's assume one day EU-CIS high or high plus sees the light and is adopted by the EU Parliament. That this would mean that the cloud service providers that are part of the federation of network would be eligible by the orchestrator to respond to a customer demand. So the customer comes and say, I need to operate this service on a EU-CIS high plus cloud service provider. Then the orchestrator can identify the cloud service providers that are available to meet this demand and then schedule the job to the cloud service provider accordingly. So that is an improvement in efficiency, an improvement in customer visibility and compliance that simplifies a lot the implementation of this vision of having secured and sovereign cloud operations throughout the 27 member states.
Okay, very good point, the UCS plus. Okay, let's continue, with Cloudflare.
Yeah, so I think the topic of SLA is very important. We all try to meet the highest standard, and I think the competition on the cloud market is quite high. So we really can have no other choice than to provide the service at the highest level, because otherwise we are simply out of the market. I mean, if we want to convince user to use European alternative to the biggest cloud providers, we simply need to try to provide the level at the similar the services at the similar level of quality. Yeah, and so I don't think it's a big problem. Then there are some, of course, numbers. So there is definitely a need to give users the tools to easily compare the different numbers and quality of service between different providers. But I don't think it's the major challenge. I mean, basically, when we have the users and they are rather happy with our quality of services, so I don't think it's a problem here. I mean, the problem is if the SLA is not met, not with the SLA up front, I would say. So we just need to make sure that the services are at the proper level and they are clearly described in a way that is easy to read and digest by the users, and then they are happy.
Okay. Yes, and the last one for this round, Charlie from Scaleway.
Yeah, I think the only thing I would add when it comes to SLAs is that obviously in terms of the hundreds of products, we offer our customers, having a conversation with them about their expected SLAs, it depends on the particular products and the difference, whether it's offering 5 nines and how it affects their business. Because you can imagine a lot of the customers that are using Scaleway are using them for, we say FinOps, basically to make money. So it's not only a drop in service, they can actually put a euro amount on that. So we have to be very careful. And, unlike some other, like say the US companies in terms of just handing out vouchers here and there, we have to operate as a profitable model that suits the requirements of customers. And we just have to be very aware of not so much tiering the SLAs, but being very open with our customers that if they are running business critical systems on certain services and they requiring it, that they should take the highest level of support if it's going to have a high impact on their business, because we don't want to get in a situation where something not being available for a minute costs them thousands. So yeah, I think we have to take a very measured approach, but to be totally honest, it's a very valid question, because when you're talking about interoperability across different vendors across Europe, it's probably going to be the hardest part. If, in all honesty, to get us all to agree, like even without any sort of finger pointing, oh, that isn't us. Okay, it's in our data center, but it's due to the network. You could understand it's a top priority for customers and something that we all need to react very quickly, but also be very transparent about.
But
okay,
very quick comment, if I may, just to add to this, because I think it's a very important point that Charlie brought, and I think this is the place where the good federation system can support, because the only solution to have like the 100% reliable and guaranteed services is to act multi-cloud and multi-regional. So this is where the federation absolutely makes sense.
yes, and thanks, Michael, because it appear the multi-cloud, like part of the solution. No, at the end, to manage different clouds is something that is not easy, and we can enter now with all this knowledge through, this AI demand, at the end that is increasing, and it will be until the edge, theoretically, and we were working for this. Let's go with the next block. The next block we will introduce about sovereignty, okay? And it's here where as a reference questions that you have here in the screen, we can start discussing. At the end, all this AI infrastructure that has to be consumed, in the conditions at the end that we are offering, but what we can promise around this. We have different types of sovereignty, from the technological side, from the data, and in some of the previous block appear hyperscalers, in this case around sovereignty, and everyone has different, meanings from the word. Okay, around this, what is your feeling about the real sovereignty, in the digital world? And in this case, we can change the order. Okay, we can start with Scaleway, with Charlie. This is part of the game of the panel.
Sorry, just unmuting. Yeah, so I think something I said before about EU values, about being open, and from that, what we're talking about two things. So it's being able to have control. So control over, as you can imagine, what we all offer here, control over the infrastructure. So giving them freedom of choice and giving them the best infrastructure on a multi-cloud as close as they need, but right down to the level of the data and the algorithms. So I mentioned before about some people's version of sovereignty compared to all of us here is different. So we have to be very clear about what that means. So it's about having sovereignty means about being able to control everything, that there's nothing outside of our control, that everything is within the federation. And then with that too, freedom to move within the European area. So I think it very much echoes, what we tried to say, the direction we're moving into at Scaleway is to be big, open, and efficient. So like those three things being about being able to offer the right amount of services in terms of infrastructure, so choice, and then obviously the data, but then obviously, as already has been mentioned, trying to do it as efficiently as possible. So that's what I think, just off the top of my head, I would say sovereignty means. I think it should really echo what it is, the EU values.
Okay, and with all this, about these European values, we continue, with Michael from Cloudflare.
So I to vast extent, I agree with Charlie. I would say sovereignty in this context is independence from the third parties. And we still now observe that the majority of European data and processing, data handling and processing happens on non-European infrastructure, which is actually a little bit pity. And the market in Europe is very fragmented. So the solutions that help users to do the processing without the risk of any third party getting into this data, getting into this their IP rights, and so on. This is important. Yeah, and I think this is something that can be supported with the federation, with the proper federation, because it minimizes the risk of vendor lock-in, reduces the cost and risk associated with dependency on the single cloud provider. So this is independency also from the customer point of view.
Okay, and vendor locking appear, very, very, very important here, and one of the main values of the federation. And in this case, GB, what is your feeling about this?
Yes, maybe let me be a bit more provocative here. Sovereignty doesn't mean anything when it comes to an enterprise perspective. Sovereignty is a nation concept. It's owned by the people, and it has to refer to politics organization. Now we have drifted in derived this concept, to match something that truly means independence and autonomy. So when we consider this under this umbrella word sovereignty, as Michael said, We're much more talking about, some practical implementation, operational concepts and ideas, which is about interoperability, portability, about jurisdictional control, about operational autonomy, about technological transparency. And I want to focus on this one because it is truly a key pillar of what we can call sovereignty, which we rather call strategic autonomy. So to achieve this strategic autonomy, you have to give the users, some visibility or maximum visibility as to what technology is used. And open source in this concept is critical. When we provide an open source stack and provide under open SLAs, open contracts, that allows for the technology, the inspection, the verification, forkability. All of a sudden, you give control back to the end users, to the customers, which feel much more empowered, much more autonomous, much more independent, able to identify the critical nodes in their production, which are not all equivalent in importance or strategic importance, and decide which ones need to be under strict control, which one can just be interchangeable, or which ones are just commodity services that can be replaced and that are not critical that are not mission critical. So again, sovereignty doesn't mean a lot. We rather talk about strategic autonomy, and in this concept, a federated network of open source cloud service providers makes so much more sense than siloed hyperscalers propositions, that keep customers locked in and doing whatever they can to keep them under their control.
Nice. And open source appear, multi-cloud, open source stacks. Perfect. And yes, let's continue, Vasco, with this more provocative, block.
Yeah. That's good. And I like the term, the strategic autonomy. That fits quite well, I think. Just one, I agree with everything that was said so far. I think one thing to highlight, I think, of course, models should not be proprietary, and the user should have these abilities to switch and mix and match services and whatever. I'm just not too sure if I would sign the statement like that it always has to be open source. I mean, I think it's certainly possible that providers, for instance, use something not open source in the background, but provide sufficiently open APIs for the user. So I don't think sovereignty or strategic autonomy 100% has to be open source. So there's a kind of a gray area in between as well.
Agreed, yes.
The other thing that I wanted to also a bit more provocative, because the vendor lock-in was mentioned, and of course, when we as Europeans talk about the hyperscalers, we always say, they have this vendor lock-in and want to keep the users, and that's bad. But on the other hand, of course, from a perspective of a provider, everybody wants the users to use their services because they're better in some way than the others, and not only have to be able to compete on price, because essentially the differentiation is what makes the users stick to a specific service. And if we get rid of this differentiation, so if we say, okay, well, we have this open source stack from this European open source stack and everybody should use, then it becomes kind of a race to the bottom in terms of pricing and so on. So you cannot really, or it becomes more difficult to compete on features. So that's just something that we need to kind of also think about. It's not the pure simple say, okay, use this solution and then the market will figure it out. So because just like telcos don't want to become dumb pipe providers, I guess cloud service providers also don't want to become dumb infrastructure providers. So that's another thing to consider. We want to differentiate each other, of course, with the services that we're offering.
Okay, thanks, Vasco. Totally agree at the end. The importance for sovereignty, we can see this is a FTSE word, that was, used, or is being used now, is that the option, or yes, to be free to choose, one option or not. I think that can be, something, to consider, because at the end we totally, agree that there are technical and political barriers. This is not an easy way, but if we can choose, and we have an alternative, for some use cases, maybe for some, users that need this kind of solution, we have to offer. Within this case, we are discussing around a federation, no? That we are working together, to fulfill these requirements. Okay, and this we will go to the third block. This will be more or less a different configuration. Because we will try to have some questions for the audience that you can, participate through this YouTube chat. And it's about the challenges. Now you have to consider that you are magicians. You can change your role. You can see that you can use your favorite LLM. Can be Mistral. If you will be, you have this magic ball, and you have to say something for the next 5 years. Let's to try to have 1 minute around this prediction about this federation idea around cloud service providers. What do you see the next steps out of all that the IPCEI-CIS is covering, as we introduced during this session? And let's start with the first order. In this case, Drasko for Jonas.
I guess you all know these quotes about predictions are hard, especially about the future. So that fits quite well here. As I said, AI is very hard to predict. Talking about the federation and the things that are currently going on in this project, for instance, and the way we're looking at it, I think, it would be nice if in a couple of years we can converge on 1 or 2 approaches to have APIs which are maybe used by a set or by most European providers, so that we don't have a very fragmented market where everyone has their own API, but we have maybe some more common APIs, and some baselines for instance for the compute nodes and how to access the GPUs on the machine. So like basic stuff like that we have a convergence there to 1 or 2. I guess it won't be in my view 1 single solution, but there if we can converge on a few solutions, it will be a much a big improvement compared to the current state. And that also brings me a little bit to this question about how do we go around this federation stuff. There's, I guess, different paths. Either we plan kind of our new architectures and write them down and then implement them and deploy them after time, but that might take a lot of time. The other hand, we might just start, go ahead and use whatever is available. So I think we have to act with a kind of a sense of urgency and not spend now many years to discuss these things to no end, but to kind of be as pragmatic as possible and see which things we can take and make use of with few modifications, and where we actually need some EU-specific solutions where we have to converge on. That's on a high level.
Okay. Perfect. APIs, marketplaces, not common. Not at the end. It maybe is the next steps without reinventing the wheel. It's something that we have to consider. Okay, let's continue with GV from Clever Cloud.
Yes. So agreed with APIs and everything that was just said earlier. Maybe to complement this, I think there's this edge to core continuum, that we want to see happening. The rise of IoTs, the multiplication and by logarithmic actually growth of generation of data sources, the importance of time series of time critical data, and that are going to be fed into AI, really requires that there is an edge to core continuum, so that we can capture the data and progressively transpire them or infuse them throughout the network, to more and more computing capacities where is needed. Number one. I can probably also consider that, it's something we haven't talked about today, which is the green effect here. I mean, the environmental impact of this network. This is a question and the jury is still not out here as to whether a federated network is more efficient environmentally than a centralized network. And I think, this is something that we as an industry have to continue to dig into and try to see if there are answers. If we are successful, this model, however, which is an alternative to the concentrated hyperscaler model that is dominating in the digital space, if we are successful in this vision of a federation, then I think that it should be exportable. It has to be exportable. So bringing this model across the continents, across the globe, is something that we probably can achieve and help providing alternatives. So there's an initiative, I guess, we want to consider to export the model. Last but not least, I guess, we're talking about something that has been funded massively by the EU in IPCEI-CIS. Upcoming IPCEI vehicles are coming up. One particularly on AI. It has to be built not from scratch, but on top of or starting what has been built for IPCEI-CIS. Building on the excellent work that has been done so far, and providing addressing the challenges that we have talked about in this talk, and some of the challenges that we have been able to mention here, must be understood by the upcoming IPCEI-AI.
Okay. Thanks. Totally agree. The transfer from the different programs is at the end the value, that we can provide. And let's continue with Michael from Cloudferro.
This is very good question and a very interesting points that were raised. I think in general we can hope for much more mature ecosystem in a few years. So I think we are heading into this direction, and I hope it will persist. What I think that is still missing a little bit, or it's still not below the possible level, is the appropriate demand from the European players and for the European institutions. I mean, we need some, I would say, economic patriotism here still from the governmental sector, that if they were to select European or non-European provider, we need some preferences still to fully to realize our potential. And this is, I mean, for me, it's clear that it's still something that is much needed. So this is like one of the factors that can help the ecosystem grow in Europe. And this will have multiple benefits, because of course development of our services, if we have the anchor customers from the public sector, it is supporting. But of course we transfer it and we do deliver the services to the commercial private sector as well. But this anchor customering from the public institutions is important. And with this, of course, we built a lot of different solutions. We try to be innovative. We do also a lot of R&D in terms of energy efficiency and edge computing. So I agree. These are the important things that can be also, let's say, export services from Europe eventually. But I think we still want to demand from to leverage this potential in Europe. We need extra demand in Europe.
Okay, perfect. I consider this a very good point. Basically, I mean, maybe we can accelerate all this interoperability if someone is pushing, in this case, and you have to be in this way to, at the end, provide this business model that appeared in the block, in the first block. And the last one for this block, Charlie, for Scaleway.
Yeah, so I'm not sure what everybody else's plans are, where they expect to be in the next 5 years, but I think I'd best summarize it in 3 areas. So competition, certification, and innovation. So we need to catch up. We need to gain pace with the hyperscalers. So that means we need to offer all the same products that they're offering. We need to offer certifications that reflect the EU values that I talked about, and that support what Europe as a whole wants and reflects where we want to go as a federation. And that should enable true innovation. So some really exciting things that we're not just the organization that regulates, that we actually innovate in some very exciting areas like quantum. And you've seen with Mistral that we can build our own AI, and that's just to echo a few things, I think, especially that JB said about open source. You know, we are massive champions of open source at Scaleway. And it's thanks to that we're able to share that. It's our clients who benefit by being able to give them things like AI open source as well. And another thing, it was said earlier, just in terms of where we're going to be in 5 years. I think I do agree also that sovereignty is maybe not the word that we should be using. What we're talking about is risk, essentially. It's like, it's risky. What all these companies have been doing for years, in terms of what lies on the horizon, it's really, really risky. And so a federated cloud, what that can mean is less risk. What it will be in the next 5 years, we hope to do a lot. We hope to offer a lot more products, a lot more services, more open, more APIs, but less risk. And I really like what Mikael said about we will get Europe up to speed, and then we'll go around the world and we'll compete with the US elsewhere.
Okay, thanks, Charlie. But this was the last round. I think that here appear a huge, things that we have to cover, some, discussions that maybe we can continue, during the next days, months, years, because there are a lot of, a big or huge challenges, for the cloud computing industry. And now let's see if they have any question from the audience. And if it occurs, we are checking. Seems that there is no questions at the moment. With this, now we are live. Happy, to be here with all of you. Previous the day of tomorrow, that you will be with your families, not. And thanks for the time, for your contribution, for your view, and totally for your transparency, because appear that I try to, not that I'm a magician, but I expect. I think that we covered the expectations, and yes, please some clapping for you. And I think, yes, we have the last thanks for the IPCEI-CIS, in this case for OpenNebula, and all the funding provided for the OpenNebula next generation, that we are building up as part of this European stack. Okay. And see you in the next panel, and nice, holidays, if we can see here.
Well, thank you, Jordi. Thank you for organizing. Really nice to chat with the rest of you. Some great topics. It's going to be interesting to see how this all plays out. So look forward to speaking to you guys again. Have a great weekend.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks as well. Yeah.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.